This is Israel at War. I'm Steve Conover. In this series, we've been focusing on what's happening in Israel. Today, we will discuss the anti-Semitic response on American college campuses. I've asked Ty Perry to join us. Ty is the Friends of Israel's North American Field Ministries manager. He also writes a recurring column in our magazine, Israel My Glory, about the ongoing anti-Semitism around the world. Thank you so much for being with us today, Ty.
Well, thanks for having me, Steve. Glad to be with you.
Ty, you've spent a significant amount of time on college campuses, particularly in Las Vegas, and you've monitored the anti Semitism on these campuses. We're not just seeing war protests, we're seeing blatant anti Semitism. Can you tell us a little bit about what you've experienced?
Sure. Thankfully, when I was at a college campus out in Las Vegas, it was considered by the Jewish community a quiet campus, meaning that you'd have protests from time to time, but really it didn't devolve into an anti-Semitic uh, movement. Today, what you're seeing, though, on college campuses in response to the attack from October 7th and the subsequent war is that the theoretical line that we used to say existed between anti-Zionism, being opposed to Israel as a Jewish state, and anti-Semitism, hating the Jewish people, that line's always existed in theory, but these protests that we're seeing have erased that line completely, in my view. When you are calling what happened on October 7th a form of resistance against occupation, when you are supporting Hamas, which, by the way, in its charters, both its original in 1987 and its 2017 revised charter, call for jihad, holy war, against the Jewish people. That completely crosses the line, and so we are now seeing blatant anti-Semitism uh, in these protests, and that's important for us to understand. Is that fundamentally, this is not about specific Israeli policies against the Palestinians or land for peace. This is fundamentally about the desire of Hamas to erase the Jewish state completely from the Middle East, and that's entirely unacceptable.
A question I've asked some others in this series of interviews on Israel at War is about how someone should consider supporting Israel or standing with the Jewish people. There will be believers that watch this that don't know any Jewish people. They live in a community where there's no synagogue. What advice would you give to them if they wanted to stand with Israel right now?
Well, first of all, I would say that's a wonderful desire to do something, whether you know Jewish people or not. That reflects the heart of God for His people, so that's wonderful. Some very practical things. First of all, no, you don't have to know Jewish people or have Jewish friends to demonstrate your support. I've heard from some of my rabbi friends who said that one of the greatest encouragements they've received in the wake of the attack and the war are notes and letters from Christians and from other non-Jewish people who just write in to say, "I stand with you." And I think for believers, particularly as followers of the Messiah of Israel, this is a great opportunity to just say, "Hey, I'm with you. I love you. If there's anything I can do to demonstrate my support for you, let me know." So, notes of encouragement. Also, there are a lot of solidarity events and visuals being held in Jewish communities, and I encourage people to go to these. I was just at one at a local synagogue a couple of nights ago, and I invited some pastor friends and a friend from church to come with me, and we were there with Jewish people. In that case, a vigil for the hostages being held in Gaza. So that's something you can do to tangibly show your support. And then finally, pray. And I think I find myself even sometimes saying, well, all we can do is pray. And that really short changes prayer because we are addressing the God of the universe and petitioning him to act in a certain way. And he encourages us to do it and really commands us to do that. So, in keeping with Psalm 122:6, we should be praying for the peace of Jerusalem. When we pray for the peace of Jerusalem, by the way, we are praying ultimately for the return of the Messiah because that's when the peace will actually exist long term in Israel. Pray for the salvation of Israel, of the Palestinians. We all have the same fundamental spiritual need. So praying for them, and then certainly praying that that Israel will have the victory and that the hostages will be returned from Gaza.
Ty, one of our colleagues was telling me yesterday that in their child's school, they're sensing that people just aren't talking about the subject of Israel right now. And I wondered if some of that had to do with feeling uncomfortable stepping into the situation and not knowing how to argue some of these points. So, my question to you is, what resources could someone in college go to or rely on so that they can be better informed when they have these discussions among their friends?
Well, thankfully, there are a lot of resources. In terms of news, I have three that I use myself. One is the Times of Israel, which is a news organization out of Israel, but they have an English uh, version. So I encourage people to go to that. That's the Times of or timesofisrael.com. The Free Press, that's the FP.com. This is founded by Barry Weiss, a former New York Times and Wall Street Journal journalist. And she does an excellent job of covering what's happening in Israel right now in depth. And then one specifically from a biblical worldview is a daily podcast, news podcast that I listen to called The World and Everything in It, put out by World Magazine. And they've done some really good coverage of Israel and of the war happening there. In terms of understanding the conflict, the broader conflict, I highly recommend looking at the website of Stand With Us, an organization, the pro-Israel organization, that has some really good documentation of the history of the Middle East conflict as it concerns Israel. So those are all really good resources for people interested in learning more.
Excellent. Thank you so much for being with us, Ty.
Thank you, Steve. Pleasure to be with you.
This is a very timely conversation, as many of us are seeing anti Semitic videos and posts on our social media platforms. Some of us, of course, are dealing with friends and family who are looking very differently at this war. Israel and the Jewish people continue to need our help. If you want to stand with us as we stand with Israel with a financial contribution, visit foi.org/standwithisrael.